The SCC EU group stage qualifiers continue in set number 2. And I said before break, these are two heavy-hitting teams, and I still hold that to be true. My name is Dolson Mifflin, alongside me to talk about Papis versus Freshly Forged. So many names, I think, to look at on both rosters.
I mean, on the side of Papis, you got Checchio,
Yes.
you got Dracomariano, you got Warchi. These guys have been around a long time. I don't need to talk about Freshly Forged. I mean, we've said their names a whole lot. Oh, you know what? Yeah, it is my job, isn't it? Freshly Forged, we got Deathwalker, we got Faeles, PrettyPriMe, Joshy, Callus, Ataraxia. I mean, do I really need to? SPL, star-studded roster.
You're right.
They're all nuts of the game, guys.
I don't think you necessarily need to talk about the names themselves, but the storyline surrounding this team was that it took them so long to qualify. It took them to the third and final week of qualifying to finally make it through into those semifinals and make their way in. The competition is obviously huge in this EU region, and this group is very contested as well. Why do you think that is? I mean, we were really only able to see a few of their games since we broadcasted only the semifinals. What kind of plays into that, do you think, that takes a roster like this 3 weeks to qualify in?
Well, I watched every game that they played because I had that exact same question. I was like, how are these guys not just steamrolling the competition? And Dave, I'm certain that it was a decision that they made to shift their playstyle towards unbridled aggression. Throughout every set, they ran it down. Deathwalker kind of headed up that playstyle where he just sat on the enemy Phoenixes, and eventually they would lose through that unbridled aggression. In week 3, we saw them maybe buckle down a little bit, use some discipline, slow it down, and, you know, finally won once they started playing Smite and not Arena.
I mean, Papis, very good team, but maybe Freshly Forged as the favorites going into picks and bans here for game number 1. I like the way you word that, though. Unbridled aggression. I imagine that's something maybe we start to see reflected in these picks and bans here. Gods that are maybe more forward-facing, let's just run at you.
I mean, both teams are no stranger to an aggressive playstyle. The Papis, their entire region is used to that type of just run-it-down playstyle. From Freshly Forged, I imagine that we might see a little bit of that shift towards what we saw in week 3, a more calm, calculated playstyle, maybe a 2 unbridled aggression characters, especially coming out of Deathwalker in that soul lane. But you got to get PrettyPriMe and Joshy on these late-game hyper carries. That's what I imagine to see here.
Well, what we saw in the third and final game of the previous set that Ryan and I were calling was Persephone and Merlin banned out. Morrigan was banned out as well in that set. But we ended up seeing a Toth versus Scylla mid lane. Morrigan unbanned this time. Kukulkan unbanned as well. So at least some normalcy with Kuku, but you don't get to see all that much Morrigan.
I mean, what we have seen from Morrigan has been potent.
Because she's banned, right?
Yeah. And, you know, when we do see her, she is so strong. The Morrigan form is undervalued, I believe. The stealth the damage out of stealth, I should say, is so high. Her pick potential is so high, as well as the utility of being able to switch to one of these high CC gods. We saw 2 Hun bots coming out of a team last week. Now, Daji and the Morrigan, that's going to be 2 ways to burn beads. If one burns the beads, the other one's definitely going to get the pull.
Now, this is a god we hadn't really seen all that much of in the Chiron. How do you like that if they end up locking this in going up against that Jing Wei?
I'm watching it intently because I'm hoping they don't lock it in. I'm not a huge fan of Chiron, but Chiron into Daji is a decent pick in that he can use his first ability to cleanse off the chains. Outside of that, Chiron is a very iffy god to me. His dash is survivability, yes, but less so than a jump or even a standard dash that'll get you out more quickly. His damage output is a little bit lower. And he does have death immunity in his kit through that ultimate, but at the same time, having to find a kill off of it, not always the easiest thing to do.
Is that kind of the saving grace for his kit for you? Maybe with his ultimate, that's why you pick up a Chiron?
The only reason you ever pick Chiron for any reason at all is for the cleanse on the first ability.
Fair enough.
So, looking at Daji, I understand why they picked it up, but preferably I would have liked to see something a little bit more aggressive for Joshy.
Very specific situation, maybe, that Freshly Forged are rotating over to that Chiron. Ratatoskr in our last set had an impact that kind of countering out what that Thor was attempting to do, and I think pretty well most of the time. What do you like in Rat?
I mean, I love Ratatoskr. He's got so much in his kit. The stun on his 3, the slow on his 1, the 2 is just such good damage, as well as a global ultimate to pressure the map. However, I'm not a huge fan of Ratatoskr into Jing Wei, especially when Thor was available. You've got the same amount of global presence as a Thor, but Jing Wei can dash out of the knockup from the ultimate on Ratatoskr, kind of making dual lane a moot gank, whereas Thor could have just dunked down and got a stun.
What do you think about that solo lane matchup now? You got an Amaterasu most likely up against that Arthur.
Good luck, Ama. Arthur's a bully god. Ama's really looking to rotate into the late game, farm up, use her auras to help out her team, whereas King Arthur's looking to win that lane. And when you are Deathwalker, looking to win the lane is not a foreign concept.
Yes, Deathwalker good at Smite.
Oh, he's pretty good.
Yeah, I think he's pretty decent. Freshly Forged versus Papis. John Finch, game number 1.
Should be a pretty good match here. Thanks, Dolson and Mifflin on the desk. It's Finch and Goremizer as we move into set number 2. And sort of as Mifflin was alluding to, I don't think Freshly Forged need any introduction. Really, neither do the Papis. Both of these rosters storied in their own way. The Papis storied in that they played together, and obviously Freshly Forged in that they've just played forever individually.
And I think that's the biggest thing. Papis have been together as a team for so long and at this level of play, so they always have a little bit of an advantage in my brain just because of that consistency from them. And granted, you go back, if you look, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, whenever they started, yeah, there's some different names there, but for the most part, they've been coming around here. But again, Freshly Forged, it's so interesting because you look at that, and that's such a stacked team. I literally can't think of how they couldn't make it into group stages for 3 weeks, but it took them 3 weeks to get here. They're one of the few teams that we've watched that have played once every single week.
Yeah, I mean, I got to imagine they just flipped a switch in week 3 and said, all right, we're getting this done. I did notice that Markus picked up the hog, the Hand of the Gods here this time. That's something that I think is worth talking about some. We don't always see it picked up, but sometimes you want a little bit of extra help accelerating your clear. It's worth grabbing. There's aggression on the left side. Khepri low.
Oh, he's going in.
Warchi wants to dash in. First blood for the Jing indeed as Khepri ends up falling. Papis strike first.
All right, and I know Papis fans, there better be some Warchi spam for that one. I mean, it's not often that you get the stars aligning for your boy to come in and get that aggressive. But very clean, and that's kind of showcasing, I think, one of the side notes of this game, which is that Ratatoskr we've seen be successful, but kind of falls off compared to where we've seen other assassins. And the Chiron's kind of a big old question mark in terms of aggression, not as much damage as the Jing, but he does bring his own utility into the game.
Yeah.
I'm just interested to see how those picks will fan out for them as the game goes on, because for Freshly Forged, those are the two weakest, because King Arthur dominates his lane, does really good in late game. Kukulkan, there's a reason we've seen him manned a lot, and the same thing for Xing. So I think they've got a lot of control, a lot of good damage. It's just, where does Joshy and Faeles kind of fit into this?
Yeah, it's a tricky matchup because Joshy can use that cleanse to get Khepri out of the abduct, right?
Yes.
But it's also their best clear tool here in the early game, so he's probably likely using it on the wave. And so that combination, the abduct into the persistent gust from Jing, it's really potent in lane, but you'd think that normally they'd be able to stop it if there's more aggression in the jungle. It's Checkyo, that's low, Faeles, which about from Deathwalker bring him low, but not enough for the kill. So now they threaten the speed buff, and I don't know if Markus can stop it on his own.
Who cares about the kill? Kills don't matter. Just ignore him. Yeah, let him back, whatever. He's effectively out of this game. Strip that speed and make the perfect rotation. Faeles knows, hey, you know what? Second buff of the game. Guess what? Just respawned blue. But he might get caught out for trying to go for this. Creed's still in the neighborhood, but the rest of Faeles' team, all Freshly Forged, kind of abandoned him.
Yeah, Deathwalker TP'd back to tower so he wouldn't miss the wave, but Faeles steps up, finds the stun, and I believe he was able to defend that blue buff there as well, too. So that's pretty crazy from Faeles to be able to make it in there. A nice sequence to make up for that decent start for the Papis and left.
And they've got pressure. If Deathwalker wants, he can walk up and take that, but I think even better, he doesn't care. They just want to take it away. You get a little bit of XP for Faeles, which at this point is going to put him effectively ahead of Markus because he now missed out on the speed and the blue. And it looks like maybe his back camps as well. Faeles is just looking for blood more than anything. He's waiting for a gank right now. But you're just taking the blue buff away. It's going to make this Ama have even more trouble in that solo lane, trying to keep up with Deathwalker. Now he has his own blue buff on his belt. He's just going to control that lane so heavily that I won't be surprised if we start to see a pretty big level disparity over there as time goes on.
Faeles being impactful even pre-level 5 on the Ratatoskr. I know a lot of the
impressive.
times he's thought of as needing that ultimate to get online, but I really don't think so. He is tough to deal with in the jungle, even just with his base kit, and then obviously the ultimate adds even the extra dimensions onto that too. So a good early game so far for Faeles to try and make up for the fact that they fell a bit behind over on that left-hand side. But despite them finding first blood, Joshy does tick over level 5 a little bit ahead of what Warchi was able to, so looks like the lane is not too far out of control.
And the weird thing is, to me at least, Faeles has been farming pretty effectively and was able to strip away 3 jungle camps away from from the Papis. and is actually just now hitting 5 compared to where we saw Markus hit it a little while ago, as it's just been this matchup. And as you had said, Joshy just slightly ahead over here. Little things like that last little play will make the big difference for him. And I'm not looking at a lot of solos happening over here. Maybe Warchi will have more potential, but Joshy is definitely going to kind of play the farm game. Much more efficient, I think, when he rotates into fights. Definitely going to be a big team player. I don't know about the 1v1.
Look at this grouping in right, though, Gormizer. There's a bunch of members of Freshly Forged rotating over. They wanted to try and make it there for speed buff, but couldn't get there in time, so they'll settle for blue to try and strip that one away. Deathwalker makes it in and does strip the buff immediately. Takes one up to the sky with the ultimate. They get grabbed by multiple members inside the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. And in comes the ultimate from Prime. Creed gets flattened. Dracomariano makes it to the ultimate, but then gets knocked up. Perfectly sequenced from Faeles. Deathwalker cuts Markus down to size as well. Freshly Forged with the swift 3-0.
That was just beautiful. That's all I have. That's my breakdown for it. That was just gorgeous.
Tough.
Everything about that looked great. The invade, the steal, the focus on the buff, immediately into Kalis going for the ult. They still want some aggression. And I mean, Chekio is kind of in a bad spot. Yeah, you can go into the ult. You might even pull some people here, but I don't know what it's going to matter for him. They're in a position to potentially kill him anyway. Instead, PrettyPriMe, not enough mana, I think, to re-engage here.
No, not at all. Chekio finds a way to turn that around. What was it, 3 against 1, where he should have gotten flattened.
Decimated,
instead.
yeah.
He managed to find the kill on the Faeles pretty big. He turns that one around. But that fight on blue buff, that starts with Deathwalker coming in kind of as bait to make sure he gets that blue buff.
Yeah.
Then they're thinking, all right, we got Deathwalker. He's a little bit out of position. Immediately gets up out of the fight with Markus and helps turn that fight around. That's huge for Freshly Forged.
It was the second 3-man ult, I'd say the second most effective 3-man ult from Xing that we've gotten to see in the qualifiers. Of course, when you watch
defense,
3 people get thrown into the fountain, you have to rank it #1. And it was the play afterward, right? He throws them immediately to his team. Deathwalker, they're hitting the ults, they hit the gas pedal, and then PrettyPriMe doesn't go for where they are. He cuts off their escape route with the Spirit of the 9 Winds, makes it so if you retreat, you're going to get hit by it. They force the ult out of Dracomariano, and it's just moments like that that showcase why these players are so touted by us, like why we keep talking about them.
And here's the thing, as much as we're talking about how good this early game has been for Freshly Forged, look at the gold. Papis actually are a little bit ahead in terms of gold at this point. Not by much at all, but
Not
you
a
would have
first blood
expected it to
bounty.
be Freshly Forged, right? After all this aggression.
Yeah.
I think the Papis need to find a way to respond to this blue buff aggression and the speed buff even too, as another blue buff gets stripped away, but for the most part, it hasn't really hurt them that bad. Creed, though, is a good bit experience-wise behind Deathwalker. That's really where that lead is materializing.
Yeah, it's going to be much more XP than gold right now, although both of them have been relatively stable. It's like give and take, right? You have Deathwalker up 2 levels. He's getting all these blue buffs. He's going to be able to dominate that lane, which should translate to clean rotations. But you're starting to see maybe the mid lane have a little bit of a favor over into Chekio just because of the kill that he's got on his belt and the farm that he's been able to find. It's if they can continue that amount of pressure as Freshly Forged, right? If they can keep it up and they can keep pushing this as far as they can, it'd be great. But I mean, this is just superior shot calls from Freshly Forged.
They've got PrettyPriMe's ultimate, so even though Markus is here, they've got the better secure. If they can burn the objective enough, they use the ultimate to avoid getting pulled. Gold Fury now quite low. Freshly Forged secure it, but PrettyPriMe is in some trouble.
Shot.
Markus gets to him with the Trickster Spirit. It's a 2 for 0, but Freshly Forged do manage to get the Gold Fury.
It's that weird kind of wash. I'd argue Gold Fury is worth it for 1 kill. When you lose your mid laner, and when you lose PrettyPriMe here specifically, he gets to back and finish his top. So actually, maybe it's worthwhile for him as well. Like, yeah, it sucks that he has to spend another 6 seconds in the timeout box, but he's kind of happy because he gets to come back and he's going to be itemized perfectly with his passive. But 2 kills is, like, arguable. Like, okay, Gold Fury's still pretty worth. Then you hit that 3-kill mark, and it's like, okay, that wasn't worthwhile for you at all. I think they invest a lot. You get a really good rotation from Markus and the rest of the team here for Papis. But you've got to be more careful, I think, and be more willing to drop an objective in the event that you get caught out like that.
And even though it hasn't entirely worked out for Freshly Forged, because you do end up losing 2 for the Gold Fury, which makes it probably closer to a wash than anything, especially because one of your mid laner goes down, you want him farming. But I like that Freshly Forged are active. Look at where Faeles is yet again, invading that blue buff the second that it spawns, and no one can rotate over there in time to prevent that from happening. They go start the Gold Fury around this Kukulkan with the best confirmation on the map.
Yep.
They are playing active in the early game, and they're not letting a couple setbacks stop them from continually looking for aggression. I think if you have a Ratatoskr jungle, you kind of have to play this way.
And I like the fact that they've adapted to it. Again, Ratatoskr is the one that I've been looking at as potentially being the weak link for them. It might come down to Chiron. We'll have to see how that translates into the late game. But right now, Faeles is playing the god the way it needs to be done. Unfortunately for them, he's still at a level deficit right now. He's still behind Markus. They're still, as a whole, behind in gold, although right now, definitely a lot more equal than they have been in the last few seconds. Stripping away these camps has been really nice. It's been effective, but it's helping Deathwalker more than it's helping Faeles. And I think that's something that is going to start playing up a big role because Deathwalker's been in these fights, which has been weird for a solo laner. Normally they're kind of standoffish, at least until 15 minutes, right? Like you don't expect to see them rotating over, but Deathwalker has been in on the Gold Fury, he's been on these blue buffs, he's been in the mid lane, like he is making the rotations.
And he's gonna have to keep doing it because all of this early game has been about getting Deathwalker ahead of Creed, and that's likely gonna happen anyway. King Arthur over Amaterasu in the early game is gonna favor the King Arthur, but they really focused it. As now the Papis are potentially looking for an invade. Markus steps up, takes quite a bit of damage. Chains are relatively blind, and so he's not gonna be able to find anyone to pull. But it looks like they get the blue buff invade anyway. Markus tricks her spirit away. The ultimate from Faeles doesn't find anything, but maybe a bit of a flank as Joshy takes half his HP, and now Chekio turns into the dodge. He has to use his own ultimate and doesn't really find anything.
I mean, he's trying to potentially pick up Khalees. At this point, you've invested a lot into getting this. That's 2 big ults on your team. They're still going to be shooting around. They're going to be able to go in. Faeles is deep in the backline.
And Warchi gets the kill on the Joshy. That means this aggression does end up favoring Papis. The Papis, they do find a 1-for-0 kill and the red buff invade. I mean, as much as we've been talking about how we like Freshly Forged aggression, the Papis have answered the aggression relatively well.
And they've been grouping up well for these fights. I mean, Creed is kind of left, out to dry in this case, but for the most part, they handle that scenario in the best way possible. Markus knows to fall back instead of try to get aggressive with his ult. He is able to kind of fall back with the help of Draco, stay alive with the help of Draco. Chekio takes a little bit of the pressure off of them. Like, it's a lot of good handoffs for their team that if they can keep that up, even though Freshly Forged have been getting into these fights, Papis are winning them.
They really have been. And what we could end up seeing develop now is that it's going to be a question of how well does Deathwalker match up against Warchi as this game goes on. Because look at Warchi, 3-0-1, already has that rage finished. He is the beneficiary of this early game for the Papis, but for sure, so far, it's the same for Deathwalker on the other side. He's been that beneficiary. Is Deathwalker going to choose to try and attack Warchi in the backline throughout the rest of this game? That could easily be the thread to follow.
Yeah. I mean, just, again, being able to choose someone and try to take them out of the game effectively, something Deathwalker's really good at, by the way. Yeah. And honestly, with Warchi getting as big as he is, like you had mentioned, finishing that rage, now just finishing his stacks on his Devo gauntlets as well, he's got a pretty big target painted on his back,
I'd say.
Meanwhile, it's just weird to me to think about it because I don't know if Creed is going to have to do that as much with Joshy. Like, I think PrettyPriMe should be his target.
Probably.
Because Joshy now has got Transcendence. He started up in the Mace tree as well. Like, looking for any of those items could be big, but it seems a little early for any percent pin, so he's more than likely going off onto maybe some anti-heal, maybe something else for his team.
We'll get a chance to see now, though, as he's sent back to base, right? And now there's trouble for Khalees here, too, as Chekio finds another kill. The Papis have suddenly turned on the gas and found themselves a 2-for-0 in the jungle. That's twice now they've stepped up into the Chaos side and come away the victors.
And being able to clean up these kills around the red buff specifically, it's helping get their duo lane ahead and shut down Joshy. That's going to be Spirit of the Nine Winds going right down the mid lane, though.
Yeah, Markus forces that one out by getting aggressive on the dodgy. Deathwalker wants to step forward now, too, but ends up taking Dracomariano up to the sky. When he's waiting, there's going to be 4 members of the Papis hungry to try and take down the king. But Deathwalker so far is surviving this fight. Now another Palau comes through, and Deathwalker bit off way more than he could chew. They pull Faeles back in, and suddenly they're lambs to the slaughter as Chekio finds a double.
And just beautiful play. That double Palau right now is doing a ton. Warchi, who cares about rotating into the fight? He was done with it. He just stays over there. And that's the glory. Again, staggered kills have been the key for this. Khalees and Joshy were still respawning and coming back into the fight. It's a 3v4 over there in mid lane. You don't need Warchi. Yeah, 3-0-1 Jing Wei, maybe higher now. 4-0-2 for him. it's going to be nice to have in a fight, but at the same time, she can take that tower down, no problem.
And you have to think about the way that this early game went, right? And that's how you can kind of dissect, I think, how this mid to late game is going to look. Freshly Forged, heavy focus on those blue buff invades. They did get Deathwalker ahead, but now look, he's virtually tied with Creed, and the left side of the map has been forfeited. That belongs to the Papis, so now they've got a big problem with this level 16 Jing way to deal with.
Yeah, she's gotten ahead and then some. Like, there's no other way to word it. 13 there for Joshy, and so far, not even able to finish that fourth item. I guess third item, technically, if you want to look at it. After that, Mage's Blessing goes away for him later. But the towers, health-wise, all in favor of Papis. Of course, that control now on the left side. You're looking for a Primal Fury. You've got more than enough time to be able to take it. The red buff finally gets picked up by Freshly Forged. PrettyPrime's in the area, potentially for a steal.
Primal Fury's low. Collis goes in with the Whirlwind of Rage, and Steel does pick up Dracomariano, but Markus takes to the sky with the dodgy. Collis getting pulled back in, and Markus shreds him easily. The tail end of the ult does manage to get Markus, bring him down quite low as Creed has to ult defensively. They may have lost their support, but Freshly Forged have stopped the Primal.
Holding on to it. Now Spirit of the Nine Winds is gone as well.
Yeah, that's their
best.
best.
If you want to make sure that you have secure, it's off the board there for PrettyPrime. So they can start it up, and they feel a lot confident about this. Deathwalker maybe getting baited out here. That's a 5v1.
The Abduct pulls him back in, and an easy kill for Dracomariano. Now 11 on the board for the Papis. Faeles has a great view from up top. Does find the knock-up onto Creed, but there's not going to be any more follow-up damage on that. 2 members have fallen so far, and the Papis still have not gotten the Primal Fury yet. But Freshly Forged finally relent, and Papis take the objective.
And they're going to be able to move this over. Looks like potentially Pyromancer is open. I also think you could take a tier 1 in mid if you want. I like clearing up the minions as you go by because it's a sneeze away from dead there. They can strip away some of the jungle. They set themselves up perfectly for at least one more jungle boss. And Papis are playing objectives a little bit better. They're playing team fights a lot better right now. And I mean, you can argue 7,000 gold, that's a lot. I can't really argue that that's not going to be effective. But the 9,000 experience, I mean, a lot of it's on Warchi, but it's definitely a hefty chunk in their favor. Deathwalker was ahead, now he's even, and every other member of the Papis is ahead of their counterpart on the side of Freshly Forged.
It is a problem. I mean, I talked a lot in the early game about how Warchi is the one that came out as the beneficiary, but Chekio's had a really good game so far here as well, too, on this Morrigan. You did a great job pointing out how problematic those 2 Powwows have been from the double dodgy so far. So now Freshly Forged have to figure out how to answer Warchi, how do they answer Chekio, and they don't even have their big King Arthur they were expecting to have ahead of everybody else because now he's virtually even with Creed and everyone else on the map.
And that's where I'm starting to look specifically at Joshy, right? These double powwows, it forces your beads or any CC immunity that you might have if you want to like ult for it, which is what we've seen Faeles doing. But now you have a Jotuns on your Chiron. He's going to be in these fights a little bit more. I need to see these cleanses hitting, and they need to be on point every time, but you're just never grouped up enough.
Markus gets aggressive with the powwow. I think he finds the beads from PrettyPrime as the tier 1 tower comes down, and Prime might be thinking he dealt with 1 powwow, but the problem is Chekio, and there will be a second. I don't know how the Kukulkan is going to stay safe. Joshy had to use his purification beads as well. Good catch as Dracomariano goes in with the Abduct. They found another target. It's Collis, and the ultimate from Prime only hits Draco.
I think, honestly, a lot of these fights from the Papis right now are putting pressure onto PrettyPrime to use that ult. Once it's gone, you're open to go in. That's such a huge source of damage that once he's out of the fight, you can play around a lot more. You leave Deathwalker isolated, you open up objectives for your play, and this tier 2 seems to be the next one they want.
Chekio has to use the beads. Deathwalker catches him out, but the silence into the Abduct. Deathwalker never stood a chance as he ends up getting caught in the jungle. Collis does grab 2 members, throw him back underneath the tier 2 tower, but there's just no follow-up. Chekio gets Joshy first. He knows he's going to get the pull to PrettyPrime for a double as he takes down 1 more. Chekio finally completes that double kill. Markus found 1 too. It fails. The only member left standing. The tier 2 tower comes down, and Papis are just running over Freshly Forged.
I mean, they've got 30 seconds of clean time right here. Faeles can try to go in, but what are you going to do? You're not going to accomplish too much in the 1v5. They might even be able to push into it. It's very dangerous game, though. They have 15 seconds. They have to burn the Titan fast.
They're going to try and see if they can burn this Titan quickly. Faeles, the only one up to defend for the next 9 seconds. Titan drops down to half HP. Faeles blinks in, but the Titan still taking plenty of damage. This Jing Wei just gets to pumping in, and the Papis in 18 and a half minutes take down Freshly Forged.
I'm sorry, I'm kind of mind blown by that.
You need to catch up.
I'm just going to throw it out this way. Most of the time, a tier 2 in mid goes down. teams immediately, in that kind of position, 4 people are dead, tier 2's down, Fire Giant's open.
Yeah.
We know Kukulkan doesn't have his ult, and we know he's not going to be here for a little while anyway. Let's go take that objective. Papis ignoring that normally. Okay, cool. Let's get this Phoenix then. The fact that you were able to read that and run into the Titan, I think, is just good caliber play on their part. And they just played those fights so well, so cleanly. Deathwalker was isolated so much at the end that it just felt like a scramble from Freshly Forged.
It really did, man. I mean, they knew that the double dodge was going to be a problem there for them, but even with the Chiron cleanse, they could not answer it. Freshly Forged stumbled in this very first game, but maybe they can bounce back. Let's see what the desk thinks.
We figured it would be lopsided, but maybe not the way this one ended up. Papis in 18 minutes were able to take game number 1 over Freshly Forged, and I'm here once again asking you to jump into game and pick up the Viewer Pass bundle. You get exclusive skins and double viewer points for exactly what you're doing right now, tuning in and watching these streams, and then you can get even more exclusive skins with those viewer points. So jump into game and take a look. Mifflin alongside me to talk about game number 1. And if you blinked, you missed that one. We figured Freshly Forged would have a serious maybe lead going into this one, the advantage on their side. They did not stand a chance.
I mean, all signs were pointing towards a Freshly Forged win. If you look at their records, you look like at the individual player legacies left behind by each individual player in this game, it's going to go Freshly Forged, but looking at that match and watching it back, it looks like Freshly Forged is lacking a shot caller. They don't have any cohesive unit play. They're always mechanically bars above the enemy team. Each individual player is playing at a mechanical level that is above their counterpart on the side of the Papis. However, they're staggering their rotations into these fights. They're taking the fights very strangely. We saw Deathwalker dominating these fights, but on his own, he's only able to drop people to about half health and fall himself, and then afterwards, the rest of Freshly Forged walk in and die.
Well, he did the second most damage in the game, Deathwalker did, and then nobody else on his team was really even close. I like the way you bring that up, sort of the mechanical advantages, because you saw outside of this first blood, Freshly Forged had an amazing 3-man kill fight, beautifully executed, to put them up 3-1 kill-wise. But that was about all we saw out of them. They couldn't push that advantage into much more. Warchi was the beneficiary of some early game kills that put him up 3-0, and they being the Papis, kept that lead going. We were wondering how this Daji would look with the Chiron on the other side, and when Chekio is transforming into Daji, it's hard to kind of cleanse everything.
Yeah, you got to use your own individual beads for the first cleanse, and then hopefully Chiron's there to get that second one, but unfortunately, we didn't see that at all this game. If Freshly Forged want to make themselves more involved in this set, they need to start delegating to a actual shot caller. It seems like they are just lacking cohesion. The second they choose how to use their lead and start to leverage that into maybe an objective or pushing down another team fight or going towards a tower, that's when we'll see some success from them. But right now, they're looking pretty bad.
Well, I'm so surprised. I mean, that is easily the fastest game we've seen over the last couple of days, and it truly wasn't even close against a team that, again, they waited until week 3 to qualify, but that was probably the most surprising thing about Freshly Forged, that it took them so long just by name recognition alone. Look to bounce back here in game number 2 and kind of wipe the slate clean after what was a very tough game number 1. Morrigan banned out here by Freshly Forged. She makes good things a little bit better for you, so a good ban there. Yamoja takes a backseat as well. Camazotz and Merlin, though, both banned out. Nothing surprising there. We have seen a lot of Merlin bans, though, I feel like, today.
I mean, Merlin, so much damage out of your mid laner. He's one of the safer gods, but not completely safe. Flicker being a very short-range jump. However, the objective burn that Merlin brings is his highest asset.
Well, Kukulkan was picked up last time for Freshly Forged and really wasn't able to find much. Unbanned here again, so maybe high priority in that mid lane. But Heimdall is a consistent ban. And Freshly Forged are going to get him here first. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Heim Dingley Donger he's a high damage god. He's got the in-hands that are going to swing so hard. At level 1, shooting out 80 damage with auto attacks. That's pretty high. About 6 auto attacks will drop about any hyper carry to dead at level 1. However, as Aggro said on the desk yesterday, I believe that Dibita is very good in mid lane. I don't truly like him in that long lane. He's a little bit unsafe. He doesn't have the kill potential that he might otherwise. You want to get this early game focus hunter involved as quickly as possible in the center of the maps where you're going to do it.
And Terra has been, I think, a great conversation piece in that Guardian role. Banned out sometimes in that, usually not in those first 6, but sometimes in that second wave of bans. Bologna as well now picked up here. What do you like in that Terra?
Terra, especially looking at Kukulkan and Xing, the ultimate is going to completely counter any sort of disjointed dot damage. So if Xing ults, Terra ult's going to get that chunk heal. Kukulkan tornadoes, Terra's going to get a chunk heal, as well as she has lockdown potential on these less mobile gods. Picking Hell into Terra is interesting. You have the cleanse to get yourself out of that root, but short of that cleanse, you're an easy root target. So it's whether or not Hell can play safely. I imagine we see her head over towards the solo lane. Playing in a Deathwalker on an immobile mage like that might be a little bit rough.
And we've only seen Bologna once over the last 2 days, and I think even over the last 3 weeks. And it wasn't the best showing out of the Bologna, but obviously still prioritized here in EU with it being picked yesterday in NA.
Bologna's always been one of those gods that can win lanes. She's got a slow in her one, she can immune auto attacks, the bludgeon AoE autos, as well as the huge burst damage. So good. Stopping enemies from using a literal game mechanic, auto attacks with the Scourge. That's pretty strong too, and she's got a traditional leap that is also a stun in her ultimate. It's an all-rounder god. She's not really a master of anything, but she's a jack of all trades. Hunbots for the Papis, though. That's a very strong pickup.
Agreed.
As I said before, Terra does counter him slightly in that her heal is going to be triggered by his ultimate, but the CC that Hunbots is going to be able to bring to peel out for the Kukulkan, peel out for the Hell, that's a huge asset looking at this game.
There was some mid lane priority in early picks and bans, and they're going to have to drop all the way down to that Discordia for 10th pick. What do you make of that matchup up against the Cuckoo?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not a huge Discordia fan. Aggro likes it. I do not. Discordia, she has damage. It's not confirmable very easily. She's a very easy god to dive onto. I'm not hugely a fan of Discordia.
Well, Freshly Forged obliterated in game number 1. The Papis look to make it a clean 2-0 here in game number 2.
Well, things should go a little bit better for Freshly Forged this time as they banned away the Morrigan, so the double dodgy problems that they could not figure out in game 1 have already been removed. But I think they brought some decent tools with them here into game number 2 to potentially get us to a game number 3 here, Gormizer. How do you like this early draft as Dracomariano goes in aggressively? Looks like Faeles had the hog, though, to defend, which is he keeps his speed.
But he's forced to take a different path here. I don't know, like, Dracomariano has no assistance with him right now, but forcing Faeles to potentially go to mid lane instead of the blue buff. It's going to get Creed online maybe a little bit faster than this Bologna. It's going to help in other portions of the map. The biggest thing I'm looking at right now, though, is realistically going to be the draft. I think if you say Hunbats, Kukulkan, and Xing, that's a solid team just for 3 parts. Add in the fact that Warchi had a stellar game on Jingwei. The weakest link is going to be this Hell, and honestly, she's just going to contribute a lot. I think Creed's going to have some trouble maybe in lane, maybe in some of these fights, especially with like Cursed Ankh, potentially a Divine Ruin coming in later, maybe Brawlers to help Faeles out against it. Anti-heal's going to need to be prioritized, but that's going to end up, I think, helping Papis out a little bit more. It'll suck for Creed and maybe for the healing, but it forces them into very specific itemization.
Creed. We don't often see the Hell taking over the solo lane. She's in mid a lot nowadays, but can certainly still work over there on that side, even if it can be a bit hard to defend your buffs. Draco has finally found his way back over to the long lane after harassing Faeles at the start of the game. We get a little bit of duo lane action for a bit here, Gormizer. Joshy on this Heimdall, who's a bit a subject of conversation. You know, is he being overvalued? Should he be getting banned out of every game? What's your read on how strong Heimdall is right now?
Honestly, I think he does a lot, and I think in the right hands, he is that strong. I mean, vision, realistically, is what I look at with him. It's always going to be incredibly strong for him. But it's more of what Joshy's doing right now. It's making sure you can use that Bifrost teleport effectively. A lot of people like to leave it in base, and then it's on cooldown for 4 minutes, and it's like, no. Keep it close, keep it nearby, and you can just almost instantly get yourself out of a bad fight.
Use it much more like sort of a short-range dash or leap as opposed to the long teleport into tower, right, is likely what you're wanting. But there's so much that Heimdall can do well. His damage on his autos and on his abilities are both absurd. It can feel so difficult to trade with him at that medium sort of range when he can outpoke you with his abilities too. And looks like he's got the Discordia passive on him, at least for now as well, so he gets a little bit of extra poke here in lane to help out as a purple buff invades in the cars. With Warchi's nearby, not able, though, to stop him. That purple buff gets stripped away.
That's just good confirm. I think that's going to be something that's completely different from the last map, or the last game, which is just going to come into the fact that Joshy on the Chiron felt negligible, didn't matter in the game, was just kind of a weight. Joshy on a Heimdall? That's going to be, well, as it is right now, aggressive and effective.
Faeles gets aggressive onto Creed, pulls him back in, the bludgeon there too. So they look for the dive, but it's just barely not enough damage. Creed able to survive just barely.
The biggest thing out of that, though, they don't get the kill. Creed, credit to him. That blue buff, though, does not go the way of Creed, so they get to strip that out of there, which is going to make it a little more difficult. Hell, I mean, against a physical laner, might want to go for something like a breastplate, but that's not online yet, so he's not going to be protected.
And look at his relic selection. Did Creed take Shell with that first relic option?
Oh, yeah, that
it's
is.
a little hard to see because it's the timer over, but he took Shell. That means he doesn't have the teleport to back and get back into lane a lot quickly. So missing that blue buff for Creed, I think, is going to be a lot more impactful here in the soul lane because it's harder for him to back and refill.
And in my mind, again, this is where I gravitate to breastplate because it's going to give you the mana, the physical protections, and some cooldown. More heals mean more mana, helps you in your lane a little bit more, especially in an instant like this. But without a teleport, you almost need that sooner rather than later. Like, I would want it as soon as I possibly can, just because of the fact that it's going to be difficult. Faeles seems to want to hang out over here on this side of the map anyway. He knows he can punish you. And if they can keep this up, granted, it's a lot of how they started the last game.
Yes.
I think it can pay off a little bit more just because the aggression Susanoo is going to have.
They should be able to capitalize on a little bit better here this game. But I mean, they had an aggressive jungler last time with Faeles on the Ratatoskr, so we'll get a good look at it. The thing is, though, you don't necessarily pick Hell to win lane, right?
No, you pick it for the late game.
Yeah, you kind of accept that Hell is likely going to get bullied, so I have to imagine this start for Creed is not so far out of the realm of expectations. Yeah. In comes Markus, though, with the Fear No Evil to try and defend this blue buff for Creed to keep him standing. The Papis have rotated over an entire coalition to try and help out.
And they're trying to wait around. Faeles, I'm not sure he's been fully spotted out as he's standing around this corner, potentially waiting for something on. No, yeah, he's right in that ward vision. They dropped it, they plopped it, and they know. And I think that's why Creed can fall back that way. But I'm looking at this Hell, like you said, not necessarily for the early game, and that's why the Shell kind of perplexes me. Shell is going to be great for when she makes rotations, but again, for another 5 minutes, I don't expect to see her making some massive rotations. I mean, maybe she comes in, tags a heal, has good damage, but for the most part, she's going to be hanging out over here. Realistically, it just opens him up to have two very heavy team-based relics. It might hurt him more in the laning phase, but like we have both said at this point, that's not going to be the worst trade-off for him.
It's not, and it is this upgraded shelf. So when you're up against someone like Bologna, and you want to make sure that you're
blocks.
Yeah, that you want those blocks to actually try and make it out of there. That's nice too. You know, Faeles weaving in autos in between the abilities. So I sort of understand where he's coming from there, but maybe not traditionally where you want to go right away as the ultimate from Prime can't quite find the target. Markus, though, does end up using the bead, still gets hit by Typhoon. But man, how many times are Freshly Forged going to just barely come up short on finding first blood? They have been right at the door.
I mean, this has been kind of the same feeling last game had, where the Papis are just playing around the fight a little bit better, whereas Freshly Forged are getting objectives on the map a little bit better. The problem is that fell apart for Freshly Forged around Gold Fury, around the Pyromancer. There was never a Fire Giant, which is weird. Normally we at least get one in a game, but Papis finished it too fast to make that matter. And the biggest issue will come down to the fact that, yeah, you're getting all this extra farm, or at least it feels like this extra farm, but then you come look at it and, well, XP per minute, Hunbats is still right next to you if you're Faeles, even though you've stripped away a lot of what he's normally taking.
Yeah, I don't know that Freshly Forged have quite created as much space in this early game as they would have liked, Gormizer, so they're going to have to keep up this pressure that they've had so far. But it is going to get harder. Creed went with a Lotus Crown for that first item, which is going to provide a bunch of tankiness, but Warchi has Airstrike. That's why Jingwei is so safe. The ultimate just lets her get right on out of there.
All right, so Warchi, I admire this more than anything. He went back in to try and steal, like, just dangerous enough that if Joshy decides to, you could potentially die there. But not so dangerous that he's forfeiting his life. I like the little call, though, just because, hey, if you can take it away, take it back, you can maybe finish off what I'm going to assume, since he did it last game, is going to be his Devo's Gauntlets. Try to get those stacks online a little bit faster, but he doesn't get that gold, so he's going to have to sit on that a little bit longer. It's Freshly Forged. They're still fishing for something. They want to kill.
They're going to try and get this red buff invade to go their way as in come the Papis to try and make the defense. Now Freshly Forged are on the full retreat after, like bandits, coming into the jungle to try and grab their prize. And I think Freshly Forged are going to have to keep doing those kind of smaller plays for now, trying to find those invades. Looks like they weren't successful. I think we saw Chekio with the red buff around him, but I think they've got to keep making those kinds of attempts to see if they can try and get ahead of the Papis.
The only issue is, again, how much of it will end up floundering like last game. I think they need to be careful and cautious about it. But there's not double pal-out this game, right? Which so
life's a lot easier when Morrigan's not in.
You're not going to have your beads burned and then still get CC'd by something huge. Typically, you're going to keep hold of them. Like, I don't see Dracomariano being able to pick up 4 people, burn all of their beads, and then Markus comes in with a huge ult. Someone's going to be able to maintain their beads throughout all of that. But that is the duo, right? Right now, it's Markus and Draco, I think, to set up Chekio, to set up Creed when he rotates, and Warchi when he rotates. Because that's going to be your relic burners right now. Get rid of the beads, get rid of the Aegis, and then set up your Kukulkan, set up your Jing to find those kills. As of right now, I haven't seen Papis really engaging at all.
No, it's felt defensive from the Papis here, hasn't it? And with their draft, that makes some sense to me. I mean, Jing makes me think of someone that you want to give time to get some items online. The same for this Hell, too. And then you'll have a great team fighting presence with that jungle mid and support combination. But if you're freshly forged, you got to be feeling better about this game. Last time,
yeah, it feels better.
When they had all these invades, Deathwalker was ahead, but everyone else was behind. This time, they do still have that lead for Deathwalker, but everyone else is experience ahead a little bit in their direct matchups. I think freshly forged are looking better this time.
And they've managed to keep a gold lead that's substantial, right? It's about 1,000 right now versus last game it was fluctuating between 500 in favor of the Papis and 200 in favor of freshly forged.
Right.
Now they've actually got something to build on. And granted, 1,000 gold, you can blink and it disappears if you do things wrong. But it's still something that's enough to say, look, we've got a substantial lead in feeling. That gives us a little bit of extra vision, maybe a little bit more sustain and healing potions right now where we're spending it. And so it's showcasing the farm for freshly forged is working out a little bit better. They just have to maintain it. Continue getting aggressive into that jungle and trying to strip away whatever you can. Doesn't matter if you always get it, just showcase that you're willing to push that fight, and it puts Papis on edge.
Another early gold fury from the Papis. They've done this a
they
lot
sniffed
this
this out,
set,
though.
and they've got the Kukulkan to try and confirm it. In comes freshly forward the Typhoon. It's charged as well, but the Papis secure the objective, but it's Faeles that finds first blood. Dracomariano ends up falling. But we talked about this last game. A support for a gold fury, probably worth.
And that's the biggest thing. It's just the support. Last time around, it was the Xing plus the Kukulkan, which is weird to see them both on the order side for 2 different teams. But having it work out this way has been better. But Chekio's a little bit in trouble. He used a beads just to try and escape Faeles, and Faeles is lurking in the waters.
So that means he can come punish Chekio, who he knows doesn't have the purification beads. What a great sequence. Faeles sets that up by getting aggressive on the Terra, and then Faeles is right there to follow back up. So now freshly forged are going to head over and try and claim their prize. The Pyromancer starting to be burned.
It's the question of, is it going to be worthwhile? Not going to give you as much gold, but it's still going to make sure you take a big objective off the map. Honestly, it enables you to be a lot more aggressive. They can spend whatever they want off of a good, clean sequence of kills, plus a tower that they've been able to get to it. And honestly, that makes it so that last fight, Gold Fury now, that's it comes out as maybe even a negative for the Papis because they took it. You can see the spike. It goes immediately in their favor and then immediately up against them thanks to the tower, thanks to that Pyromancer, and thanks to those clean kills.
Faeles having a great game on the Susanoo so far. Faeles playing this Terra well too, and that pressure in solo onto Creed has been strong as well. So now freshly forged enjoy about 2,300 experience, about 1,300 gold in their favor. But as always, it's not a question of did you get the lead, but did you get enough of a lead when you're up against a Hell, who is such a big gain for you in the late game. But I think so far, freshly forged have done just about everything they can.
Yeah, honestly, getting Faeles ahead right now I think is the most important part, just because your jungler is maybe going to start to feel less effective than a Hunbats is in the late game. But Markus and Dracomariano are specifically the 2 players that I was highlighting, like you want to beads burn, you want to get in there, you want to engage, and they've not necessarily been doing that. Draco tried to in that last engagement, but freshly forged are doing it just fine. Terra's going in, making sure that you're using your beads, like in the event of Chekio. The Aegis is going to not be on, or is on cooldown for him right now as well. Like things like that are going to open it up so Faeles, who's already been playing aggressive, can get even more aggressive. And it's paying off for him. I mean, 2 kills. He's got both of them on his belt. It's a slower pace, but it's working out better for freshly forged.
It has been working well for Freshly Forged so far, and if you're the Papis, I feel like you have to find a way to start dealing with some of this aggression from Freshly Forged, but I feel like they've just been getting out-rotated here so far. I liked the call on the Gold Fury, but it just ended up coming at too hefty of a price tag for them. Once Freshly Forged sort of recognized how many resources were used in the objective, they just stepped on the gas pedal, and the Papis were kind of out of answers. But on more even fights, they've got not Defender of Olympus, excuse me, but they've got Fear No Evil, they've got the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel, they've got the Hell, they've got some tools to slow down the aggression from Freshly Forged.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be solid, but the problem is when they actually can use them, right? Because they haven't been rotating. Like, Creed hasn't been a part of anything as of yet, and so he has been hanging in there. I mean, he's doing well level-wise, honestly, with how abused this Hell should be in lane by a Bologna. Just being one level behind is perfectly fine. Finishes off the breastplate. They're looking for blood on Joshy, but there's a good example of the Bifrost. That crystal is so helpful. I mean, Freshly Forged just have this one figured out right now.
It really feels that way, doesn't it? I mean, the purification beads hadn't even fallen off yet by the time Joshy was out of there on that Bifrost. But that's good from Dracomariano. You kind of got to do that, right? Blink in, force out the relics, and as long as they follow back up on that engage with Joshy, who now without beads is going to be more vulnerable, then I think that play from Draco still works out for him.
And now Freshly Forged are the ones looking for something. And this is what they've been doing all game. Right now, they're just kind of looking, any buffs for us to take? Anything tasty in the jungle? No, okay, something tasty in the lane, though. There's a Jing Wei, there's Draco. Either one's going to be a good pickup for him.
This is a hefty rotation. Prime is here as well. They want to go for the full Tier 1 tower dive. I say that, but they don't initially get anything, and they're on their way out. A heavy rotation, they really don't find much of anything.
I'm waiting for the blink from Markus. If you wanted to close that gap, it's that question, can you get to Prime in time? And if you can, then it's Prime time for you. You can go in and try and kill him off. But they were just far enough away, and maybe just not worthwhile enough with the Fury respawning in 30 seconds to commit that hard on, especially since you know that Pyromancer will be coming back very shortly thereafter, so you know the timer's on things. Keep your ults while you have them. Take it as a net neutral. You didn't lose anything, you didn't gain anything.
Chekio in some trouble, has used the Aegis already, but has held on to the bead so far. The ultimate, though, does force Faeles to stop the aggression, so Dracomariano grabs the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. Now Faeles is without the Purification bead alongside Joshy if the Papis don't look for a fight, but Chekio had to back.
I would argue, though, that's a huge win. They not only force Chekio out, they get rid of his ult, they get rid of Draco's ult as well, so Xing can't aggress. Markus is the biggest threat on the board right now from the Papis. And honestly, that means that this Fury maybe is not wide open for Freshly Forged, but it's an available option. They can force a fight here, try to find a pick, but Creed's rotated over, healing on the board, cleansing on the board. Collis specifically is going to have to kind of keep track of that in his mind, because he's been the one going in, looking for the roots, the stuns, to lock people down. And even without beads, Chekio is safe as long as Creed is watching over him.
It's gonna be tough there for him. Creed's got to make sure that he's got to
be
those
on
cleanses.
point.
Yeah. Or Chekio could be in some trouble. He doesn't have Aegis either for this next fight. Joshy considered starting up the Primal Fury, but they end up dropping it, so they're not going to try and force that fight here just yet. But you were saying, Gore, that you're going to need a lot of anti-heal to deal with this with Creed on this Hell. It's already starting to come through. Divine Ruin for PrettyPriMe. The Brawler's Beat Stick is there for Faeles. That's a start. And the upgraded Cursed Ankh, too. So they've got just about everything that they need. They're feeling good.
And the thing is, upgraded Ankh, it's one of in my eyes, it's just such a good relic, especially when you're going to be shutting it down. Because, hey, now not only are you not healing, but I'm going to hurt you a lot harder. So it's like effectively doing the opposite of what you want to do with your abilities. You are just going to take damage now as we dish it out. But Chekio's in the neighborhood as this Fury started, and he has the Spirit of the Nine Winds.
That's the best way to contest that objective right now. And the Papis do enough to stall out Freshly Forged on this Primal Fury, who got up to about 1,000, 1,500 gold, but they plateaued there for the last 6 minutes. So this next fight's critical. As the Primal Fury comes low, the Papis are the ones that secure it, but Freshly Forged wants to fight on the back end, but Whirlwind of Rage and Steel grabs two. Fear No Evil is there to follow up, and Chekio buries Collis on the Terra. Good strike, though, stops the aggression.
It's only going to be a 1-for-1 right now. It's solo for support, so overall, I'd call him Freshly Forged a little ahead, but they finally get rid of Faeles. They're chasing down Prime, trying to get rid of him too.
Markus gets to the backline, but Joshy is there to peel, and that's what your backliners have to do. They got to have each other's backs as Joshy gets the double kill, but Warchi wants to find another one of his own. It's 2 for 3. Ooh! Make it 3 for 2, or 4 for 2 rather, in favor of the Papis. They get the Primal Fury, and they run over Freshly Forged.
Now, it's been a while since I've gotten to say this, but that's just a classic lazy back. Hey guys, there's no way they're chasing me anymore. I'm going to back next to my red buff. You walk a little bit further, you're under your tier 1, you're perfectly fine. It's just that mentality. I want to get back to base. I need to get back into the fight or get out of here as fast as possible. PrettyPriMe punished, I guess, for his sins in that case, and it's opened up a little bit more here. A good, clean fight from Papis, a Pyromancer immediately, and Chekio's got his ult back in his favor. I mean, they're opening up objectives more and more for this side. He might have to use it here since Khales is lurking and waiting.
Khales can't quite get there in time, so Papis able to take the
he might
Pyro.
die.
They do take the Magai's cloak away from him. Dracomariano gets that in the back half of the leap, and the Papis are right back into this. And this is what you were talking about, Goremizer, right? You said 1,000 gold lead's good, but it's the kind of thing where you could blink and it's gone.
Yep.
And that is exactly what's happened. Now it's 1,000 in favor of the Papis on the back of that Primal Fury fight. It's one thing that they secured the objective, but how the fight goes so handily in favor of the Papis.
I mean, it's just I think the maybe laziness that comes down a little bit at the end there. I think if you don't get that kill on the PrettyPriMe, it's pretty good, but Faeles overstays his welcome. Deathwalker overstays his welcome, and Khales was isolated thanks to the Fear No Evil. Like, Draco picked up 2, Markus, then Fear No Evil 2. That's 2 clean kills. Deathwalker's on an island trying to fight everyone on his own. PrettyPriMe tries the lazy back. Papis just read the scenario. The fact that Chekio decided to just peek around that corner, see what was going on, just showcases they have good awareness. And honestly, if you go back and look at the graphs, you can actually see the Gold Fury dip, the team fight dip, then the Pyromancer dip. Like, all 3 of them in favor of the Papis. And that's just clean objective calling from them.
It really was clean objective calling. And it's so funny, you know, when I was talking about the Fear No Evil and the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel and how good those tools are, you had a really good point. You're like, it doesn't matter how good those tools are if they don't get a chance to use them in the team fights in the optimal way, right? Especially because Creed wasn't in the fights just yet and that they hadn't seen very good Fear No Evils. But that time Freshly Forged kind of walked into the wood chipper, didn't they? They let those tools from the Papis be used almost optimally, almost perfectly, and the fight goes their way. If it's a grouped up team fight, it is hard not to favor the Papis.
And yeah, it really comes down to how, like, are your beads available coming into this? And the problem is, I think Faeles didn't have his, but Deathwalker as well as Khales are going to be susceptible to Draco. If you can burn them on someone like Faeles or on someone like PrettyPriMe, now all of a sudden PrettyPriMe is a target here for Markus, right, in those events. If he burns those beads, you set it up. But Draco has to go fishing and find a little bit more in those scenarios, right? He comes into that one, just kind of uses his ult and buys his zone.
Yeah, I don't know that that's a super favorable trade for Draco there. Blink and the ultimate, and really all PrettyPriMe drops is his own ultimate. He uses that erratic behavior to get a range, and then the ultimate for CC immunity on that apple of Discord. So well played by PrettyPriMe to avoid that aggression. But it's 4-4, only 8 kills in 20.5 minutes. But it has still felt like there's been plenty of contestation, there's been plenty of fighting.
Yeah.
It's just that it hasn't resulted in a ton of kills.
Well, it's been a ton of pressure, just not in the form of kills and fighting. It's been pressure in the jungle, pressure on objectives, doing these like Gold Fury and Fire Giant dances, but at a higher level than really we've gotten to see. And that's kind of what I expect out of these 2 teams. One team, star-studded SPL player roster, one team been doing the damn thing for 5 years together, so you expect them to keep it up. And right now, well, what better way to keep it up than to go for a Fire Giant?
This is a little bit more than keeping it up, Goremizer. This is a, what, a 60-40 at best of the ultimate. It's a little early from Chekio, but it ends up working out. The Papis secure the Fire Giant, but the fight on the back end is looking good for Freshly Forged so far. Faeles is way in the back line, but he takes a ton of damage. Markus can't find the return damage. Now they need some help for Creed as well, who's been locked down inside the blue buff, and Khales swinging away with the Terra autos. It's just not enough. Creed has survived inside all of it, but Prime finally gets in there to shut him down. Now Deathwalker wants some action as well, but Markus gets the first one. Deathwalker enters back, but Chekio finds one of his own, make that 2 as he gets the double, and now Deathwalker's in some trouble. In comes Warchi. They make it a 4-for-2.
And that the biggest thing in that, it's not going to seem like a lot, but Draco gets an ult that doesn't find anything except a ton of relics. Look at the cooldown timers on Freshly Forged. They're going to be waiting forever on those. You lose Chekio, which might hurt. Creed honestly was kind of a sacrificial lamb. He lived way longer than he should have anyway. You keep Warchi alive and you keep Draco alive, which I think are the 2 that you need to siege down at least one tier 2. Ideally, I don't know, 10 seconds left, you can look for this Phoenix. I'm looking at the other tier 2s personally. I just don't know if you have the aggression you need and the safety you need to get this one in full effect.
Well, Collis is going to be up here in a few
I stand
seconds, but
corrected.
they are
Jeez.
shredding the Phoenix. I got to wonder how much the Aussie's helping out with that flat pin or for Warchi. Or not Aussie, excuse me, I'm looking over the other side of the bill. No flat pin available for Warchi, but they shred through the Phoenix just that quickly anyway. That's how good the Fire Giant buff is to help him out. A nice fight for the Papis. And here's the problem that I'm seeing. It's feeling like now twice in a row, Gormizer, Freshly Forged, have kind of gone with a pick-based type of draft.
Yes.
And they have gotten good solo lane pressure, but they have not been able to translate that over to the rest of the map. And then they're running into these big team fight compositions from the Papis that they can't beat in these mid to late game team fights.
And the biggest issue is in all of these fights, the one common factor has been Papis have the better secure. I mean, Kukulkan is hands down the best secure that you're going to have in the game, but they don't really have anyone that I'm looking at afterward is like, okay, here's who can steal it away from a Kukulkan. You know, Chekio missed that ult in a way, got the Fire Giant really low. They were still able to clean it up, but he didn't secure it with that ult. The team fights have just been better for Papis.
This is aggression for Freshly Forged, though, even though it was the Papis that are the ones with the Fire Giant right now. They want to try and take this fight while the Papis might be reeling. Dracomariano grabs Joshy, and he ends up falling, but a kill does end up going the way of Freshly Forged on the Markus as well. A 1-for-1, and the Papis fall back to their tier 2.
I mean, you force Warchi out as well, so you're going to slow this down. Only 2 people left standing with that Fire Giant. But it's still on Warchi and Draco, which, again, arguably are the 2 best people to have it. One for sustain so he can tank, and the other so he can do what he did to that Phoenix to these towers as they come forward with it. But kind of odd aggression in my eyes coming down from Freshly Forged. I didn't expect to see them, 1, that far, but 2, looking for kills that deep. Still, it's beneficial for them. Again, Joshy, I don't want to count him out, but he hasn't been a huge factor. Last game, he hasn't really felt like a huge factor. This game, if you're going to lose someone, it kind of feels like he might be the best one to have drop.
Yeah, at this point, maybe it's not quite what you would have expected from this highly prioritized Heimdall. Tier 2 goes down, but Freshly Forged again want to take the fight. Deathwalker knocked up by the persistent gust. In comes the apple from PrettyPriMe, but it really doesn't find anyone now. Deathwalker is on an island, and the island is a deadly one. They send him right back to the base the hard way. Now the Papis with their 5v4 advantage. I say 5v4, and Markus hasn't quite caught up, but they're going to press onto the gas. Dracomariano grabs one. It's Collis. He gets flung right back to the wolves, and Chekio takes another kill.
I mean, you're looking at it now, the chin size have been finished for Warchi. If you thought he was going to hit hard earlier, now he's hitting just as hard. 4-0-6, like, it is definitely his day on this Jing way. Like, he is feeling comfortable. He's going to help burn through that Phoenix. And I mean, now your 2 Phoenixes down. They've got a full 5-man group. They just burned your beads. This is looking good for the Papis.
It is. They're looking to play aggressive here as well. They lock down Joshy on the right-hand side. He gets the ultimate off, but Chekio makes him pay for it. You got to stand still when you're casting it, and he ends up paying the price for it. Papis now have 5 members strong moving in the Titan room, and Faeles has been taken out of the equation. It's just Prime still standing to defend, and Markus puts him down as well. The Papis, to surprise of just about everyone, I got to imagine, have just 2-0'd Freshly Forged.
And that, I mean, it just showcases how well they work together. And a lot of these, again, everything in Game 1, everything in Game 2, it came down to the team fights, right? Freshly Forged controlled the early game like no other, but it didn't translate to the objectives. Gold Fury was easily secured by Papis. Pyromancer, same story. Fire Giant, a little closer, but still ended up going so heavily in their favor that it made that big difference. You got to look at Chekio. You got to look at Warchi. I mean, those slash lines speak for themselves.
And I got to look at the picks and bans here from Freshly Forged. In Game 1, they give up the Kukulkan, the Jingwei, and the Morrigan, and it ends up being too much for them. And here in Game number 2, they're still playing into that Jingwei from Warchi, still playing into the Kukulkan there for Chekio, even though they took that Morrigan out of the equation. And I think we're seeing why Kukulkan is so highly valued.
Yes.
He gives you such an early credence to go for these objectives and know that you've got the best confirmation.
And I think that's the biggest thing. And some of these fights, you see Chekio throw his ult out, and it's like, okay, now's the time to get aggressive. Like, this is where you want to fight, but they never quite had it. Of course, that honestly, that might have been that turning point, right? Like, 18 minutes, they just won the fight, a 3-for-2. It's not in your favor if you're Freshly Forged, but it's something that you can shrug off. And then you lose that 4th person, and then you lose Pyromancer. Like, it started to stagger much more heavily in favor of the Papis there, that it kind of feels like one little lazy back, especially at this level, might be one of the main reasons your team started to fall much further behind than they were originally.
That's a huge win, though, for the Papis, Goremizer. I mean, beating Freshly Forged here, who I think a lot of people would have had as one of their top teams in this group, is a huge win for them. Because, I mean, the Papis, I think, are also in that upper echelon.
Yes,
I would have
for
expected
sure.
the Papis to make it out. And now they've got a win that not a lot of other teams are going to be able to match.
And this is what I would argue is probably their biggest win. A lot of the other teams in this group are strong, but Freshly Forged, again, has one of the strongest names behind them.
They do.
And now that we've seen it this way, Papis might be the strongest team in this group. So that is a good stamp to have on your side to say, hey, you know what? We're going to make it into the circuit.
These guys have been playing together for a long time. They are hard to beat. That's going to do it for set number 2. But don't worry, there's plenty more Smite here in Europe coming up after this break.